After leaving the boutique, she walked down the street with a calm, measured pace. The city was alive with the usual sounds of traffic, distant chatter and the occasional honk, but she felt entirely centered. The encounter inside the boutique had been intense, but she carried herself with the quiet satisfaction of someone who had handled a difficult situation with grace and authority. The wealthy woman, left behind in the boutique, stood silently for a few moments. Her pride had been bruised and her assumptions shattered. She realized she had underestimated someone based solely on appearance, wealth, and status. What had seemed like a simple, ordinary interaction had become a profound lesson in humility. She looked around at the staff and the other customers, who now regarded her with subtle amusement or knowing smiles. The experience had left her unsettled, but it was undeniable. She had been taught a powerful lesson without anyone raising their voice or creating conflict. Meanwhile, the black woman continued her walk, reflecting on the events. She had learned early in life that true power was quiet and steady, built through patience, knowledge, and resilience. She had also learned that arrogance and assumptions, no matter how wealthy or confident the person, could never overpower self-awareness and experience. Every step she took reinforced the calm strength she carried, a reminder that her achievements were hard-earned and deeply rooted in perseverance. Back at the boutique, staff members began returning to their usual tasks, but the energy had shifted permanently. They had witnessed something extraordinary. Someone who commanded respect not through intimidation or wealth, but through quiet confidence, knowledge, and integrity. Whispers and murmurs circulated among employees and customers alike, as everyone recognized the subtle but undeniable lesson in humility and awareness that had just unfolded before them. The wealthy woman finally turned away, her pride humbled. She had entered the boutique expecting to assert dominance, but instead, she had been confronted by someone whose calm presence spoke louder than any wealth or status could. She realized that judging others based on superficial appearances was not only wrong, but could lead to embarrassing and unexpected consequences. As the black woman walked, she allowed herself a small smile, thinking about the wider implications of the day's events. She had handled the situation without confrontation, anger, or retaliation. The truth had revealed itself naturally, quietly, and powerfully. She had turned what could have been a moment of tension into a teaching moment, one that would resonate with everyone who had witnessed it, whether in the boutique or through the whispers that now circulated beyond it. The incident quickly became a story among the staff and customers. Conversations, subtle glances, and quiet remarks all centered around the composure, confidence, and authority of the black woman. Social media, though not yet fully aware, would later amplify the story, highlighting how true strength and leadership often appear in quiet, understated ways. The lesson was clear. Humility, patience, and knowledge were far more influential than wealth or arrogance. Later that day, the black woman returned to her office to continue her work. She managed her boutique empire with the same meticulous care and dedication that had brought her to this point. Each decision, each design, each employee interaction was handled with thoughtfulness and precision. She understood that leadership was not about asserting dominance, but about guiding, inspiring, and setting examples through actions rather than words. Her employees, now aware of what had happened in the boutique, felt a renewed sense of respect and admiration. They understood that their leader embodied qualities that were rare and valuable: strength, patience, knowledge, and humility. They had seen her in a challenging situation and observed how she turned it into a moment of authority and education without ever raising her voice. It was a lesson that would stay with them for years to come. The wealthy woman, meanwhile, reflected quietly on her own behavior. She recognized that she had allowed assumptions and arrogance to guide her actions, leading to humiliation and embarrassment. It was a lesson she would not forget, one that reminded her that respect could not be demanded or bought, and that appearances often deceived. True authority came from experience, wisdom, and integrity, qualities she had overlooked in her judgment. Over the following days, customers and staff continued to speak of the incident. People admired the black woman's composure and confidence, and her story became an example of quiet empowerment. It highlighted the importance of treating others with respect, regardless of appearances or assumptions. In a world often focused on status, wealth, or outward impressions, the narrative demonstrated that true power was found in resilience, patience, and self-awareness. The black woman herself remained humble, reflecting on the encounter with gratitude for the lessons it reinforced. She understood that life often presented challenges, moments where patience, observation, and calm composure were the most powerful responses. She had turned a potentially negative situation into a reaffirmation of her values and the strength she carried. As weeks passed, the story of the boutique encounter continued to circulate subtly among local communities and social circles. It became a reference point, a quiet inspiration for those who witnessed it firsthand or heard about it later. The wealthy woman, having learned the hard way, carried the memory of that day with her, a reminder that judgment based on appearances could lead to embarrassment and humility. For the Black woman, the experience reinforced the principles she had always lived by. She knew that respect was earned, confidence was cultivated, and humility was a sign of true strength. Her leadership, her empire, and her presence all reflected these values. Every interaction she had, every decision she made, carried the weight of someone who understood that success was more than wealth or appearance. It was the culmination of hard work, perseverance, and integrity. The boutique continued to thrive, and the Black woman continued to inspire those around her. Staff, customers, and even casual observers learned from her example that poise, patience, and quiet confidence could command attention more effectively than arrogance or entitlement. The incident became a lasting story, a testament to the power of humility and earned authority. And in the end, the lesson remained simple yet profound. Appearances are not reality. Assumptions are often wrong, and true strength comes from within. The Black woman had shown this in the most graceful way possible, turning a moment of potential humiliation into a celebration of composure, intelligence, and resilience. As she walked through her boutique one last time that day, greeting staff and customers with gentle smiles and attentive words, she knew that her example would resonate far beyond the walls of the store. It was a story of empowerment, of quiet authority, and of the triumph of self-assured composure over arrogance and prejudice. And in that quiet, enduring moment, she understood that the most powerful lessons were often taught without anger, without confrontation, and without the need for recognition, simply through the unwavering confidence of knowing one's own worth. She stepped out of the fitting room, carrying the jacket and shoes with the same calm grace she had shown all along. Her movements were deliberate, each step measured, each gesture controlled. The boutique, which had felt like just another shopping space earlier, now seemed charged with anticipation. Customers and staff alike sensed that something important was about to unfold, though no one could have predicted the true weight of the moment. The wealthy woman, who had been following her every move, noticed a subtle shift. The confident composure, the quiet authority. It was almost tangible now. Her smirk, which had been so self-assured, faltered. For the first time, she felt unsure, as though the rules of this small world she had dominated no longer applied. "Are you done yet?" the wealthy woman asked, her tone a mixture of impatience and curiosity. She tried to mask her growing uncertainty with a hint of condescension. "I just don't understand how you can be so calm." The Black woman paused, looking directly at her with steady eyes. There was no anger, no defensiveness, only quiet assurance. "Calmness," she said softly, "comes from knowing your worth and understanding your environment. It's not about who seems powerful or rich. It's about knowing yourself." The wealthy woman blinked, taken aback by the clarity and confidence in the response. She had expected defensiveness, fear, or at least some sign of insecurity. Instead, she was met with something far more unsettling: absolute composure. She laughed nervously, trying to regain control. "Well, I guess some people are just naturally confident, huh?" But the other shoppers, who had been watching quietly, began whispering among themselves. There was a sense that the scene unfolding was not ordinary. Even the boutique staff now looked on with growing awe. They had seen many customers, many wealthy and entitled individuals, but the Black woman's quiet authority demanded respect without even asking for it. The wealthy woman stepped closer, her tone sharp but attempting politeness. "You know," she said, "it's really impressive how you carry yourself. But I think it's safe to say this kind of place isn't really meant for people like you." The Black woman's eyes remained steady, her voice calm and precise. "I appreciate your opinion," she said gently, "but I think there might be some misunderstandings about who I am and what this place represents." The wealthy woman laughed, thinking she had a clever comeback. "Oh, I'm sure. But honestly, it's just cute, the way you try to fit in." She smirked, expecting the typical embarrassed reaction. And then it happened. The black woman took a deep breath, her calm smile never faltering, and said something that stopped the wealthy woman in her tracks. "Actually," she began, her tone quiet but firm, "I am the owner of this boutique." For a moment, the wealthy woman froze. Her eyes widened slightly and her mouth opened, but no words came out. The customers nearby gasped softly, realizing something extraordinary had just been revealed. Even the boutique staff seemed momentarily speechless, as if the world had paused. The black woman continued, her voice steady. "I built this brand from the ground up. Every piece you see here, every design, every stitch, it reflects years of hard work, vision, and dedication. And now I see that someone thought they could judge me without knowing the story behind me." The wealthy woman's smirk vanished completely. Confusion, shock, and embarrassment flickered across her face. She had assumed she had power here, that her wealth and status gave her the right to belittle and mock. But now, faced with the truth, she realized how wrong she had been. Customers whispered quietly to each other, some nodding in approval, some smiling at the moment of poetic justice. The boutique staff, now fully aware of the situation, exchanged glances that carried both relief and admiration. They had seen the woman's poise, her knowledge, and her quiet authority all along, but now her title confirmed everything they had suspected. The wealthy woman attempted to speak, but her voice faltered. I didn't know," she began, but the words sounded small and weak. She had tried to assert dominance through ridicule and assumptions, and now she was left exposed, humbled in front of everyone. The black woman's eyes met hers steadily. "It's a common mistake," she said gently. "Judging someone based on appearance or assumptions is easy. Understanding them, their journey, and their achievements, that takes humility and respect." The wealthy woman shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware of all eyes on her. Her companion tried to offer support, but even they looked uncertain, realizing that the entire dynamic had changed. What had started as a scene of arrogance and mockery had transformed into a powerful lesson in humility. The black woman walked slowly toward the counter, placing the items she had chosen down carefully. "I hope this moment serves as a reminder," she said softly, addressing both the wealthy woman and anyone watching, "that true power is quiet, patient, and earned, not assumed or flaunted." A few customers clapped lightly. Others nodded, and the boutique staff smiled, proud to see such composure and leadership. The wealthy woman looked down, her cheeks flushed slightly, realizing that her attempts to belittle someone had backfired spectacularly. The black woman continued, her voice steady and kind. "In life, many people judge quickly, assume incorrectly, and act on ignorance. But those who know their worth, who respect themselves and others, carry a confidence that no arrogance can shake." The wealthy woman muttered something under her breath, her pride wounded, while the black woman's calm presence dominated the space. Every movement, every word, radiated the strength of someone who had fought hard, persevered, and achieved success on her own terms. The boutique staff quietly resumed their duties, but the atmosphere remained charged with admiration and awe. The customers lingered, some capturing the moment on their phones, others simply observing the display of composure, authority, and humility. The wealthy woman eventually stepped back, realizing that any further attempt to assert dominance would be futile. Her assumptions had been shattered. She had underestimated someone based on appearance, and the consequences had been immediate and undeniable. The black woman, sensing the resolution of the encounter, smiled faintly and returned to the task of browsing. She maintained her calm, composed demeanor, aware that the moment of revelation had taught a powerful lesson without any need for anger or confrontation. The wealthy woman, now quiet and reflective, watched as the black woman moved with effortless grace. She had been humiliated, not through words or revenge, but through truth and composure. The reality of who the black woman was, successful, knowledgeable, confident, had overturned every assumption. Nearby customers whispered excitedly, sharing their impressions. Many commented on the woman's poise, her calm authority, and the poetic justice of the situation. Even those who had initially assumed she was ordinary now recognized her extraordinary presence. The black woman took a moment to reflect internally. She had navigated the situation with patience and dignity, turning what could have been a humiliating encounter into a teaching moment, not just for the wealthy woman, but for everyone present. Her calm, quiet confidence had revealed the truth in a way that was impossible to ignore. Finally, she collected her items and approached the door. She glanced back once, offering a polite smile to the staff and customers, leaving a sense of admiration and inspiration in her wake. The wealthy woman, humbled and thoughtful, watched her leave, understanding that this was a lesson she would not forget. As the black woman stepped out into the bustling street, the boutique returned to its normal rhythm, but the energy lingered. The encounter had left an impression that went beyond shopping or social status. It had shown that humility, patience, and true confidence were more powerful than wealth, arrogance, or superficial judgment. And in that quiet, decisive moment, the black woman walked away with a sense of satisfaction, knowing she had turned a challenging encounter into a testament of strength, perseverance, and the quiet power of self-awareness. She stepped out of the fitting room holding the jacket and shoes with graceful confidence. The fabric felt luxurious beneath her fingers, a reminder of the effort, time, and expertise that went into creating such pieces. She moved slowly through the boutique, taking in the displays once more, her eyes scanning each detail carefully. She didn't hurry. Every step she took seemed deliberate, as though she were marking her territory with quiet authority, even if no one yet knew the truth about her. The wealthy woman noticed her and leaned slightly closer to her companion. "She's taking forever," she whispered with a hint of impatience, "and she acts like she owns the place. Can you believe it?" Her companion smirked but looked slightly uneasy. The newcomer's calm confidence was starting to unsettle them. Unlike other shoppers who might appear flustered under scrutiny, she moved with a quiet control that made it hard to ignore her presence. She didn't need to raise her voice or make grand gestures. Her demeanor alone spoke volumes. As she approached the counter, she carefully placed the jacket and shoes down, glancing briefly at the staff. "Could you please hold these for me while I continue browsing?" she asked politely, her voice even and composed. The staff, still unsure of her true identity, nodded with a mix of curiosity and respect. They could sense that she carried an authority that went far beyond a typical customer. The wealthy woman decided to push further, stepping directly in her path. "You know," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "you really should consider leaving the expensive items for people who can actually buy them. It would save everyone some trouble." The newcomer paused, meeting the wealthy woman's gaze calmly. There was no anger in her eyes, only a subtle, unwavering certainty. "Thank you for your advice," she said softly, "but I understand exactly what I'm doing." The wealthy woman's smirk faltered slightly. For the first time, she felt a twinge of uncertainty. She had assumed that mockery and intimidation would provoke a reaction, but instead the newcomer remained steady, composed, and entirely in control of herself. Nearby, a few customers had stopped to observe the interaction. Whispers floated quietly through the boutique, curiosity growing with every passing moment. People could sense the tension, the subtle power struggle, though they didn't yet know the full story. The atmosphere had shifted from casual shopping to something more charged, almost theatrical. The newcomer moved toward another display, this time examining a set of elegant scarves. She picked one up, feeling its softness and weight, and draped it over her arm. Each motion was measured and deliberate, almost as if she were performing a quiet demonstration of her knowledge and taste. The wealthy woman, clearly growing frustrated, tried another tactic. "You know," she said, lowering her voice so only the newcomer could hear, "it's impressive how you act like you belong here. But really, some things are just beyond your reach." She smiled, thinking she had delivered a clever blow. The newcomer turned to her slightly, maintaining her composed expression. "I appreciate your concern," she replied evenly, "but I assure you, I know exactly where I stand." Her words were calm, almost gentle, yet they carried a subtle strength that made the wealthy woman pause. The boutique staff continued to watch quietly, exchanging glances filled with intrigue. They sensed that the newcomer was not an ordinary shopper, but no one yet knew her identity. Her composure, her awareness, her quiet confidence, all of it hinted at something far beyond what anyone had assumed. As she moved toward a mirror, holding a handbag delicately in her hand, the wealthy woman whispered to her companion, clearly trying to assert control. "I don't understand," she said, a hint of frustration creeping into her voice. Why isn't she intimidated? Doesn't she know her place? Her companion shrugged but looked uneasy. Maybe she's just confident, they suggested, though even they seemed unsure of the answer. The newcomer, observing the reflection in the mirror, adjusted the bag slightly and turned toward the wealthy woman. Confidence, she said softly, comes from knowing who you are and what you've built. It's not about appearances or assumptions. The wealthy woman blinked, momentarily taken aback. She had not expected such a calm, measured response. Most people would have been flustered, embarrassed, or even angry under such scrutiny. But here was someone who faced her arrogance with quiet poise, refusing to be shaken. Nearby, customers whispered among themselves, some curious, others amused. The tension was palpable, and everyone could feel that the situation was no longer just about shopping. Something important was unfolding. A lesson in humility, judgment, and respect. The newcomer moved gracefully to another display, picking up a pair of shoes and examining the stitching. She tested the leather, the flexibility, and the overall craftsmanship. Every motion was deliberate, demonstrating a familiarity and expertise that only someone with deep knowledge of luxury fashion could possess. The wealthy woman, sensing that her attempts at dominance were failing, decided to escalate. "Honestly," she said, leaning slightly forward, "you really should leave these items to people who understand them. It would be better for everyone involved." The newcomer looked directly at her, calm and composed. "I appreciate your concern," she said again, her tone gentle yet firm. "But I am well aware of what I'm doing." At that moment, the staff exchanged subtle glances. Something was happening here that they didn't fully understand. The newcomer's quiet authority had shifted the energy in the boutique. What had started as an ordinary shopping trip had become a test of assumptions, patience, and perception. She moved toward the counter, placing the handbag carefully down and adjusting the jacket draped over her arm. She glanced at the staff, who now treated her with a newfound respect, though they still didn't know why. The wealthy woman, watching this, began to realize that she might have underestimated the newcomer. The newcomer took a slow, deliberate step toward the door, pausing to glance back at the wealthy woman. Her calm demeanor, combined with the subtle air of authority, made it clear that she was in control of the situation, even if no one else fully understood it yet. The wealthy woman's smirk had disappeared. She was no longer confident or amused. Instead, there was a flicker of doubt, a realization that this encounter was not unfolding as she had expected. For the first time, she felt uncertain, unsure of how to proceed. The boutique staff, meanwhile, continued their quiet observations. Whispers spread among themselves, hinting that this was no ordinary customer. They didn't yet know her identity, but they could sense the strength, expertise, and composure that radiated from her. Inside, the newcomer allowed herself a small, private smile. She knew the moment of revelation was approaching. The wealthy woman's assumptions, arrogance, and sense of superiority were about to be challenged in a way that would leave a lasting impression. She moved with quiet grace, her eyes scanning the displays one last time before heading toward the fitting room again. Her movements were unhurried, deliberate, and filled with an understated power that made the wealthy woman increasingly uneasy. This was more than shopping. It was a subtle confrontation, a lesson in patience, observation, and the quiet power of someone who understood their own worth. The wealthy woman had assumed she had control, but the newcomer's composure, confidence, and awareness suggested otherwise. As she disappeared into the fitting room once more, the wealthy woman muttered under her breath, frustrated and confused. "I don't get it," she said. "Why doesn't she react the way she should?" Her companion shrugged but looked uncertain. "Maybe she's just different," they said, though their words carried doubt. Inside the fitting room, the newcomer allowed herself a moment of reflection. She knew that soon the truth would come to light. The wealthy woman's judgment and arrogance would be confronted, and the real story of her authority and success would finally be revealed. And in that quiet, measured space, she prepared for the moment when everything would change, when patience, poise, and self-assurance would triumph over assumptions, wealth, and arrogance. After examining the jacket, she decided to take a few more steps around the boutique. She wanted to see the new arrivals, to feel the fabrics, and to appreciate the details that so many people overlooked. Her movements were calm and measured, yet every step seemed to draw attention, though she made no effort to be noticed. The wealthy woman, however, was not ready to let her go unnoticed. She walked alongside, smirking as if she were guiding a child through a museum. "You really like these things, don't you?" she said, her tone dripping with condescension. "I mean, it's cute how much effort you're putting into looking like you belong here." She paused, holding a delicate silk blouse against herself to judge its fit. She kept her smile polite but firm. "I appreciate beautiful things," she replied evenly. "It's nice to recognize quality when you see it." The wealthy woman's companion laughed softly, but it wasn't just amusement. It was a subtle tension. The newcomer's calm confidence was unsettling, though they didn't yet understand why. Most people in the boutique assumed she was just another shopper, but her aura suggested something more. She moved toward a display of designer handbags, running her fingers along the smooth leather surfaces. Each bag had a story, a level of craftsmanship that only someone truly familiar with fashion could appreciate. She could tell which pieces were limited edition, which were staples of the brand, and which were carefully crafted to appeal to certain customers. The wealthy woman leaned closer again. "Honestly," she said, lowering her voice, "you should probably leave these things to people who can actually afford them. It's better for everyone." She gave a soft, condescending laugh. Inside, the newcomer felt a small flicker of irritation but did not allow it to show. Instead, she thought about the irony of the situation. This woman, with all her wealth and confidence, believed she had power in this boutique. Yet she had no idea who the newcomer truly was. The thought made her smile faintly, though politely. The boutique staff watched quietly from a distance. They had noticed the tension growing, the subtle but clear dynamic between the two women. Some exchanged nervous glances, unsure how to react. They sensed that the newcomer was not ordinary, but no one could have predicted just how extraordinary she really was. The newcomer moved deliberately toward a mirror, holding a small purse in her hand. She adjusted it, observing the reflection carefully. The wealthy woman whispered something to her companion, probably making fun of her in ways that seemed clever to them but ultimately fell flat. "Do you always act like this?" the wealthy woman asked, tilting her head slightly as if expecting the newcomer to apologize or explain herself. "I mean, it's fine, really. I just wonder how people like you get so confident." The newcomer turned slightly, still smiling politely, and said, "Confidence comes from understanding your own worth and knowing who you are." Her tone was calm but carried a subtle weight, a quiet strength that the wealthy woman did not anticipate. The wealthy woman paused, caught off guard by the statement. For the first time, she realized that this was not a simple situation. She'd assumed that mockery and condescension would intimidate her target, but the newcomer remained steady, unshaken. That calmness unsettled her, though she masked it with a smirk. Nearby customers started to notice the interaction. Some looked on with curiosity, others with subtle amusement. It was a scene of quiet tension, one that carried a story in the making. No one spoke aloud, but the energy in the room shifted slightly, as if everyone could sense that something significant was unfolding. The newcomer moved toward a display of elegant shoes, examining each pair with the care of someone who understood quality and design. Her hands glided over the materials, and she occasionally picked up a pair to test their weight and structure. Every gesture was precise and measured, revealing a familiarity with luxury that went far beyond casual shopping. The wealthy woman, growing impatient, decided to escalate. "You know," she said with a raised eyebrow, "some of these things are very special. Maybe you should let someone else handle them. You wouldn't want to damage anything, would you?" The newcomer simply smiled, not breaking eye contact with the shoe display. She felt a quiet amusement at the attempt to intimidate her. She knew that power could be subtle, that it did not always come from wealth or status. Sometimes the quiet, controlled presence of someone who truly understood their position could speak louder than arrogance. At that moment, she noticed a few staff members moving discreetly to adjust displays and assist other customers. Their glances toward her were cautious, curious, and slightly hesitant. They could sense her authority, even though they did not know her identity. Something about the way she carried herself, the precision in her movements, the calmness in her voice, it all suggested she was someone important. She picked up a pair of shoes, examining the stitching, the material, the tiny details that most people would overlook. The wealthy woman leaned closer again, trying to assert control. "Be careful," she said in a patronizing tone. "These are very expensive. You wouldn't want to make a mistake." The newcomer finally looked directly at her, eyes calm and steady. "Thank you," she said softly, "but I know what I'm doing." There was no arrogance in her voice, only certainty. The wealthy woman's smile faltered slightly. She was used to people bowing to her confidence, not challenging it quietly but firmly. The boutique continued to buzz with activity around them, but the energy between the two women was now the focal point. Other shoppers glanced briefly, curious about the subtle tension. They didn't know what was happening, but they could sense a story unfolding that was bigger than the clothes or the boutique itself. The newcomer moved toward a fitting room, carrying the jacket and the shoes. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath, maintaining her composure. She knew that the wealthy woman assumed she was in control, but the reality was very different. Every step she took, every small gesture was deliberate. The wealthy woman whispered something again, probably mocking her in some way. But the newcomer's calm demeanor made it clear that she was unfazed. In fact, the quiet confidence she exuded began to unsettle the wealthy woman more than any words could have. As the newcomer disappeared into the fitting room, the wealthy woman turned to her companion, frowning slightly. "I don't get it," she said. "Why isn't she reacting the way she should? It's like she doesn't even care what I'm saying." Her companion shrugged. "Maybe she's just confident," they offered, though the tone suggested uncertainty. The wealthy woman's smirk had vanished. She was used to being the one who dominated spaces, the one who controlled situations, and now, for the first time in a long while, someone had challenged her in a way she hadn't anticipated, not with anger or confrontation, but with calm confidence, subtlety, and quiet authority. Inside the fitting room, the newcomer allowed herself a small private smile. She knew the moment of truth was approaching. The wealthy woman's assumptions, arrogance, and sense of superiority were all about to be revealed as misguided. She could feel the energy of the boutique shifting, the anticipation building quietly. She took a moment to reflect on the irony. Here was a woman who had assumed she was superior simply because of wealth and appearance. She had made judgments without understanding the story behind the person she was mocking. But that's how many people operate in life, judging quickly, acting on assumptions, and never realizing that appearances can be deceiving. As she stepped out of the fitting room, carrying the carefully selected items, she knew the next few moments would be decisive. The wealthy woman was still observing, still smirking, still thinking she had the upper hand. But the newcomer's calm and composed presence now held an unspoken power, a quiet authority that would soon shift the entire dynamic. It was a moment of patience, of silent strength, of controlled confidence. She knew that the true reveal, the recognition of her authority, expertise, and success, was coming. And when it happened, it would leave a lasting impression not just on the wealthy woman but on everyone present. She walked into the boutique with quiet confidence. The glass doors slid open smoothly, and a faint chime announced her entrance. Inside, everything gleamed. Polished floors, sparkling chandeliers, and racks of clothes that looked like art. She moved slowly, her eyes scanning the displays with interest. The boutique was busy, with a soft hum of conversation and the occasional laugh. Customers moved between racks, touching fabrics and lifting garments to see details, while sales associates hovered nearby, ready to assist. Despite the luxurious surroundings, she didn't rush or act nervous. She had been here many times before, but today she had a different purpose. She wanted to observe, to see what was new, and perhaps pick out a few items for herself. Dressed simply in comfortable yet stylish clothes, she blended in, or so she thought. From across the room, a wealthy woman noticed her. Dressed in a designer outfit adorned with flashy jewelry and carrying an air of entitlement, she immediately decided the newcomer didn't belong. A smirk appeared on her face. She whispered to her companion, loud enough for the newcomer to hear. "Look at her. She's trying to act fancy, but she clearly doesn't know what she's doing." The word stung slightly, but she did not react. She kept moving, her eyes on a display of elegant scarves. The wealthy woman, however, was not satisfied. She walked over, leaning slightly as if to inspect the newcomer more closely, and said, "You know, sweetie, maybe some things here are a bit too expensive for you." The comment echoed in the boutique, drawing quiet glances from others nearby. Some faces held curiosity, others pity. She smiled politely, a gesture that masked any internal frustration. She could feel her cheeks warm slightly, but she did not let it show. There was a strength in keeping calm, in not responding to provocation, and she had learned it well over the years. The wealthy woman, clearly enjoying the moment of superiority, continued, "I mean, you can try, but you might want to stick to places that match your budget." Her tone was dripping with condescension, as if she were giving advice to a child. It would have been easy to snap back to tell her exactly what she thought, but she didn't. She knew something the other woman could not even imagine. There was a power here that the wealthy woman could never see, quiet, patient, and unassuming, but powerful nonetheless. She took a step closer to the scarf display, fingers brushing over the delicate silk, and calmly replied, "Thank you. I'll keep that in mind." The wealthy woman laughed lightly, satisfied with her perceived victory. Her companion chuckled, nodding in agreement. They were clearly enjoying themselves, thinking they had made their point. But the newcomer remained composed, glancing briefly at the boutique staff who were watching the interaction with curiosity. Some exchanged subtle looks, unsure why this quiet woman commanded such attention without saying much. As she moved on, inspecting a rack of elegant coats, the wealthy woman followed. "Oh, and by the way," she said, lowering her voice so only the newcomer could hear, "it's really cute that you're trying to fit in here." She smirked, thinking she was clever. The newcomer simply smiled, maintaining her polite demeanor. Inside, she felt a mix of amusement and mild irritation. She had encountered people like this before, people who assumed they could judge someone based on appearance alone. Yet there was always a lesson in these moments. People who judged quickly without knowing the story often found themselves surprised later. She glanced around the boutique. The staff were attentive but cautious, sensing the tension between the two women. Some regular customers watched discreetly, curious about the unfolding scene, but she didn't need an audience. She had her own inner strength, built from years of experience of proving herself in environments where she was underestimated. Her hand hovered over a beautiful jacket, soft leather with elegant stitching. She felt the quality, the craftsmanship, and allowed herself a small smile. This boutique wasn't just a place to shop. It was a symbol of success, a space where effort, vision, and perseverance were rewarded. She knew something the wealthy woman did not. She was not just another shopper. She had earned everything here. The wealthy woman, noticing her focus on the jacket, leaned closer again, attempting to assert dominance. "You know, hun," she said with a patronizing tone, "maybe you should leave the expensive pieces to people who can actually appreciate them." This time the newcomer did not respond immediately. She carefully considered her words, aware that this was more than just an insult. It was a challenge. The wealthy woman assumed she was powerless, but she had patience and strategy on her side. She could have reacted angrily, but she chose control over confrontation. She picked up the jacket, feeling the weight and texture in her hands, and casually said, "I appreciate quality. It's important to recognize it when you see it." Her voice was calm, steady, without a hint of anger. The wealthy woman's smirk faltered slightly, sensing a subtle confidence that she hadn't anticipated. As the newcomer walked toward the fitting room, the wealthy woman whispered something to her companion, likely plotting her next move. But the newcomer knew that appearances could be deceiving. People often assumed they understood situations at first glance, but they rarely saw the full picture. This moment, she realized, was setting the stage for something larger, a reveal that would leave everyone in awe. The boutique staff, who had been watching quietly, exchanged glances. There was curiosity, some skepticism, and a hint of excitement. They sensed that the newcomer was not what she appeared to be, but they had no idea just how significant her presence truly was. She walked past racks of dresses, shoes, and handbags, each piece more exquisite than the last. Her eyes scanned details that others might miss: the stitching, the fabric quality, the design lines. She was not just a customer. She was an expert, a creator, someone who understood fashion on a deep level. Yet she moved with humility, blending in while quietly assessing the environment. The wealthy woman followed, her pace slightly faster, trying to maintain the illusion of control. But the newcomer didn't flinch. She knew patience was her ally, that every action and reaction could be measured precise. She had built her life on strategy, on careful observation, and on staying composed when others expected her to falter. As she approached the mirror, she held the jacket up, studying how it fit and moved. The wealthy woman peeked over her shoulder, clearly trying to assert superiority. But the newcomer's serene expression and confident stance made it clear that she was in her element. She was calm, collected, and entirely aware of her surroundings. A small smile touched her lips. She knew the wealthy woman's assumptions were about to be challenged. She could feel the subtle energy in the boutique shift, the tension rising as curiosity built among the staff and customers. This was more than shopping. It was a moment of revelation in the making. And at that moment she understood fully that patience, composure, and quiet confidence often spoke louder than arrogance, entitlement, or wealth.